My joy is gone, grief is upon me, my heart is sick. Yeah, that's how this week's Hebrew scriptures start. Hey everyone, I'm Reverend Jim Keat, digital minister at the Riverside Church. This is the Word Made Fresh weekly show where we talk about upcoming lectionary passages, liturgical themes, all that good stuff, so you can borrow ideas for sermons, Bible studies, or just because you're a Bible geek and you like learning about this stuff. So let's learn about this stuff. This week we're looking at the Hebrew scripture. We might jump into one of the other ones just because it's interesting, the gospel lesson for this Sunday, September 18th. But the Hebrew scripture is Jeremiah chapter 8, verses 18 through 9, verse 1. So the rest of the chapter. And the first line is, "My joy is gone, grief is upon me, my heart is sick." This is not the typical message we're used to hearing in churches. I mean, we like the happy, happy, joy, joy. I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. You know, smile, smile, because I'm happy. Wait, what is that? Yeah, you know. So this is a little bit different. And I tend to be the happy, happy. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Peter Pan is my patron saint. I want to live and die in Disneyland. But this passage is, I think, a necessary invitation for people with my disposition and necessary empathy and solidarity with just the lived experience of so many people in our world. So the whole passage goes on, starts with, "My joy is gone, grief is upon me, my heart is sick. Hark the cry of my poor people from far and wide in the land." This continues. This is Jeremiah writing, and Jeremiah is the prophet who was writing as the people from Israel were in exile in Babylon. So this is lamenting and grieving what they've lost as they've been dispossessed from their land, and they are now living as a people under exile, which frames a lot of the narrative going forward. This section even ends in verse 22 with a question: "Is there no balm in Gilead?" Now, we're used to that phrase, "There's a balm in Gilead," from the song, from the hymn that you've probably heard, maybe even sung. It's a beautiful song.
There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
But Jeremiah's question is not really saying there is a balm in Gilead, but it's, is there no balm in Gilead? Have we run out? Do we have nothing left to soothe us? We're just stuck in this place. So a couple things here. A balm in Gilead. Later in Jeremiah, it comes back as a positive. What does it say? Later in chapter 46, "Go up to Gilead and get a balm." So the invitation, the instruction is to get the balm from Gilead, a little while down the book. But here, it's more of it's sitting in this place of suffering. There is no balm in Gilead. Is there nothing? And to back up even further, a balm in Gilead, we know it from the hymn, from the concept, from the metaphor. We turn Jesus into the balm in Gilead, which could be problematic. That's for another video. But it's this place, a location. Gilead was a region, a nation, an area. And they would have balms from the plants, things that could then soothe your body and your wounds. The first time we see this mentioned is actually in the book of Genesis, chapter 37, verse 25. I'm looking at my screen here. And this is the story when Joseph's brothers are about to send him off to Egypt. Joseph, Technicolor Dreamcoat, all that. Second youngest of a bunch of brothers. Brothers were jealous, threw him in a well, saw some traders, and that's where this is. They sat down to eat their meal, the other brothers, and they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. So the first mention of a balm in Gilead is in the context of Joseph being, sold by his brother and then taken to Egypt, and that whole story continues, which is an interesting metaphor too, in the way that Joseph kind of became that healing for not only Egypt but beyond. But back to Jeremiah. Jeremiah is asking the question, is there no balm in Gilead? We so quickly jump to the balm, to the thing that makes us feel better. And I think when we do that, we jump past the reality of the pain and the feeling of grief and the need to lament. Over half of the Psalms in the Bible have lament themes. And the Psalms are the hymn book of the Hebrew Scriptures. This was their source for worship that they would recite and say and sing to be led in their worship services. And over half of them have psalms of lament. What's the percentage in our Christian hymnals in our churches, or in the praise choruses that we jump around and sing with the same 3 chords? Do we give space for grief, for suffering, for lament? Because these are just as human of emotions, if not even more so, than the joy and the excitement. So Jeremiah's passage in this week's Hebrew scripture, I think it is 2 things. It is solidarity and empathy with all who are suffering. And let's be honest, we live in a world where suffering continues. 3 years now of an ongoing pandemic that's killed how many millions of people in our world, to just individual losses in our own lives. I mean, look at the death of the Queen of England, and we see that as a huge moment for the world, as a transition of a figurehead of a state of power, a new king, but he's also grieving the death in his family. So all this is to say, we live in a world where we need these moments to be present with suffering, with death, with loss, rather than just moving right past it. So maybe that's the invitation, if you're a preacher this coming week, to give your congregation space to just be present with whatever is around them, whatever we are holding together, and to recognize we're not alone in these moments. Okay, one I said earlier, we're going to maybe jump ahead because I like to jump around. The gospel for this week is Luke chapter 16, verses 1 through 13. It's a parable. It's Jesus telling stories, which are always interesting. This one ends, you cannot serve God and wealth. So if you're looking for your Sunday to talk about Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and critiquing late stage capitalism, Jesus has got you covered, or at least he got you started. You can take it from there. All right, thoughts from you below on space for lament in our lives, in our faith communities, or thoughts on, critiquing capitalism. See you next week. Bye.